the 15th of April, 2026, Wednesday morning. Common Buddhist text, guidance, and insight from the Buddha. The chief editor is Most Venerable Dr. Phra Brahmapundit, Prayun Dhamma Chito. This is part 2, the Dhamma or the Dharma. We left off yesterday in Theravada Buddhism on the parable of the blind man, an elephant, and undetermined issues. This passage introduces a set of 10 views on what are known as the undermined or undeclared issues. Ayakata. The section introduction before this, this was because the Buddha set them aside without answering them. And as answering them was irrelevant to attaining liberation from suffering and led to pointless quarreling and disputes. Those who hold such views are portrayed as having fixed on only one limited facet of reality, which they perceived only partially, and then overgeneralize from this. In another passage from the Majjhima Nikaya, where a monk says that he will abandon being a monk unless the Buddha gives answers on the 10 undeclared issues, Gautama Buddha says he has never promised to give answers to these questions, and likens the monk to someone shot by a poisoned arrow, refusing medical treatment until he knows everything about who shot it and about the composition of the arrow. Sir, here in Savatthi, in ancient Bharat, lived many renunciants, Hindu Brahmins, and other wandering ascetics who pursue other teachings and hold various views, having various preferences, having various likes, having dependence on various forms of dogmatic clinging. The views of these renunciants and Hindu Brahmins include: the world is eternal. This alone is true and everything else is false. The world is non-eternal. This alone is true and everything else is false. The world is finite. This alone is true and everything else is false. The world is infinite. This alone is true and everything else is false. The principle life or life principle is the same as the mortal body. That alone is true and everything else is false. The life principle is different from the mortal body. This alone is true and everything else false. After death, the Tathagata is this alone is true and everything else is false. After death, the Tathagata is not. This alone is true and everything else is false. After death, the Tathagata both is and is not. This alone is true and everything else is false. After death, the Tathagata neither is nor is not. This alone is true and everything else is false. They live piercing each other with sharp dagger-like words, disputing and quarreling, saying, reality is like this and not like that. Reality is not like that, but is like this. Bhikkhu monks, the wandering ascetics of the Jains and the Hindus who pursue other teachings are blind and lack in visions. They do not know what is beneficial and non-beneficial. They do not know the reality and unreality. Not knowing the reality and unreality, they live piercing each other with sharp dagger-like words. In the past, Bhikkhu monks, there was a certain king in Savatthi, in ancient Bharat, that the king called a certain person and told him, "Friend, come here. Assemble all the people in Savatthi who were blind from birth in this place." He said, "All right, Lord," to the king in response, and taking everyone born blind in Savatthi, went to that king and said to him, "Lord, I have made all those blind, or all those born blind in Savatthi to assemble. If so, friend, present an elephant to those people born blind." He said, "All right, Lord," and presented the elephant to the people born blind, saying, "This elephant is like this." He presented the elephant's head to some, the ear to some, the tusk to some, the trunk to some, the body to some, the foot to some, the thigh to some, the tail to some, and the tail end to some. He went to the king and said, "Lord, an elephant has been observed by these people born blind. It is in the king's turn now, Bhikkhu monks." Then the king went to those people born blind and asked, "Have you people born blind observed an elephant?" "Yes, Lord, we have observed an elephant." "If so, you people born blind, say what an elephant is like." Those who have felt the head of the elephant said the elephant is like a pot. Those who felt the elephant's ear said the elephant is like a winnowing basket. Those who felt the elephant's trunk said the elephant is like a plowshare. Those who felt the elephant's body said the elephant is like a storehouse. Those who had felt the elephant's legs said the elephant is like a pillar. Those who felt the elephant's thigh said the elephant is like a mortar. Those who felt the elephant's tail said the elephant is like a pestle. Those who felt the elephant's tail end said the elephant is like a broom. They saying the elephant is like this and not like that, fought each other with their fists. The king was amused at that. In the same way, Bhikkhu monks, the wandering ascetics who pursue other teachings are blind and lacking vision. They live piercing each other with sharp dagger-like words, disputing and quarreling. Now this can be found in the Patama Natnatitiya Sutra in the Uttana, 67 through 69. The teachings as having a practical focus. Gautama Buddha as teaching what he knew to be both true and spiritually useful. When teaching someone, Gautama Buddha selected from what he knew to be true, what he saw as spiritually useful for the person to hear, whether or not they found it agreeable. So too, Prince, such speech as the Tathagata knows to be not fact, not true, not connected with the goal, and which is unwelcome and disagreeable to others. Such speech the Tathagata does not utter. Such speech as the Tathagata knows to be fact, true, but not connected with the goal, which is unwelcome and disagreeable to others. Such speech the Tathagata does not utter. Such speech as the Tathagata knows to be fact, true, connected with the goal, which is unwelcome and disagreeable to others. The Tathagata knows the time to use such speech. These three formations are then repeated, which is welcome and agreeable to others, in place of which is unwelcome and disagreeable to others. What is that? Because the Tathagata has compassion for beings. This could be found in the Appaya Raja Kumara Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. Right and wrong grasp of teaching. In the passage, Gautama Buddha responds to a monk who claims that attachment to Kamaguna, sensual pleasure, poses no danger. Seeing him as fault-finding person, intent only on trumpeting his own view, not using the teaching appropriately. Bhikkhu monks. Here, some foolish men learn the Dhamma, but having learnt it, do not closely examine the meaning of those teachings with insight. When they do not closely examine the meaning of those teachings, the teaching have no appeal to them. When they contemplate them, they learn the Dhamma for the advantages of fault-finding or for the advantage of defending their theory. For whatever purpose they should learn it, they do not have the purpose fulfilled. Those teachings, wrongly grasped by them, will conduce to their harm and suffering for a long time. Just as a man needing a snake, looking for a snake, wandering in search of one, will see a large snake and take hold by the coils of his tail. That snake would turn around and bite the hand or the arm of the other limb. On account of this, he would meet with death or deadly suffering. What is the reason for this? It is because his wrong grasp of the snake. This can be found in the Alaka Tupama Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. The Dhamma is for crossing over, but not for clinging to. This passage explains that the righteous Dhamma, the Buddha's teaching, practices and states of mind that lead to or to reach the further shore, that is Nibbita, Nibbana, Nirvana, beyond suffering, and are not to be clung to with the attachment and dogmatism. One needs to cultivate good states of mind without attaching to them. Bhikkhu monks, I will show you how the Dhamma is comparable to a raft, being for the purpose of crossing over, but not for the purpose of grasping. Listen to it and bear it in mind well. Just as a man who has come to the highway would see a large stretch of water, of which the near shore is insecure, fearful, and the further shore is secure and without fear. There is no ship, boat, or bridge to cross over the near shore to the further shore. It occurs to him thus: what if I build a raft by collecting grass, sticks, branches, and creeper? So you build a raft by collecting grass, sticks, branches, and creepers, and making effort with his hands and feet, reach the other shore safely. Then to the one who has crossed over, this thought occurred: this raft was of great service to me. I safely cross over to the other shore, depending on it, putting forth effort with my hands and feet. What if I mount it on my head or haul it on my back and go where I like? Bhikkhu monks, is he doing the right thing if he does so with the raft? And doing what will he be doing with the right thing with the raft? Bhikkhu monks, to the man who has crossed over, this thought might occur: this raft was of great service to me. I safely crossed over to the other shore, depending on it and putting forth effort with my hands and my feet. What if I pulled it up to dry ground, or sunk it in the water and go where I like? A man doing what would be doing the right thing. Just so, Bhikkhu monks. The righteous Dharma is comparable to the raft for the purpose of crossing over and not grasping hold of. Even good states should be let go of those by those who understand. So how much so with bad states? Alaka Dupata Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. Put good teachings into practice rather than learning many unhelpful things. This is from the Dhammapada 19 and 101. Although reciting many sacred texts, the heedless one who does not act according is like a cowherd counting only others' cattle. Such a one does not partake in the renunciant life. Better than 1,000 verses of meaningless words is one word of a verse, hearing which one is calmed. The way to liberating knowledge. This is from the Sangarava Sutra in the Majjhima Nikaya. Direct experience is more reliable than tradition or reasoning. The first passage here is a part of a critique of various grounds on the basis for living a satisfactory religious life. The first ground is reliance on a teacher who said he has uninterrupted omniscience, yet who meets the unanticipated misfortunes when he then explains away by saying, quote, "It was destined to be like that," unquote. That quoted part of the passage critiques reliance on the authoritative traditional teaching or on the speculative reasoning. In the second passage, Gautama Buddha emphasizes that his knowledge is from direct experience, which in his teachings comes from the great calm, mindfulness of concentration. Santaka. Some teacher here is one who depends on hearing systematically transmitted sacred teachings. He is one who takes the true, what is heard as systematically transmitted sacred teachings. He teaches a doctrine based on hearing systematic transmitted sacred teachings handed down through generations in the form so it was said. So it was said in accordance with the sacred collections of traditional teaching. But for one who depends on hearing systematically transmitted sacred teachings, he may have remembered it well or not remembered it well. Furthermore, it may be in accordance with fact and it may be otherwise. This, Sandaka, is the second unsatisfactory form of religious life declared by the perfectly awakened Buddha, the Arihat, who knows and sees. And on this basis, an intelligent person would not live a religious life. If he lives one, he would not gain a right approach, a wholesome state. And again, Santaka, some teachers here is a rationalist investigator. He teaches a doctrine based on what is self-evident to him, beaten out by logic and resorting to investigation. In the case of rationalist investigator, there is what is well-reasoned, there is what is ill-reasoned. It may also be in accordance with fact, that it may also be otherwise. As just described, this Santaka is the third unsatisfactory form of religious life declared by the perfectly awakened Buddha. That's from the Sandaka Sutra, Majjhima Nikaya. There are Bharavaca, some renunciants and Brahmins who, on the basis of systematically transmitted sacred teachings, claim to have attained here and now perfection in the ultimate higher knowledge. Like, for instance, the Hindu Brahmins who profess the knowledge of the three Vedas. There are some renunciants and Hindu Brahmins who are rationalists and investigators. There are also those who have by themselves experienced higher knowledge of the Dhamma and claim perfection to the ultimate higher knowledge. Bharajawa, I am one of them. Sankuvarava Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya. Now, it is good to note that Buddhism, Hinduism, and Jainism, all the classifications of Sattanat Dharma are oral traditions. They were not written down. They were passed on through the monk class. Hinduism specifically had sannyasis, or monks, renunciants, that basically passed on it verbatim, word for word. Now, unreliable grounds for knowledge and ethical guidance. This is from the Kesaputra or Kamala Sutra in the Anguttara Nikaya. This passage emphasizes the testing teachings against one's own experience, rather than accepting them by simply based on tradition, reasoning, or being impressed by or an allegiance to a particular teacher. One should personally assess moral fruits of particular teachings. The focus here is not on propositional content that a teaching may include, but the mind state it encourages and the moral fruits it produces. Through the states of delusion and its opposites are relevant to propositional content. The Kesaputriya Kamala spoke thus to the Blessed One. Sir, there are some renunciants and Brahmins who come to Kesaputra. They expound and illumine their own theory. They despise, revile, speak contemptuously of, and insult the theories of others. Other renunciants and Brahmins also come to Kesaputra and do the same. Sir, to us there is doubt. There is indeed perplexity as to who among these venerable renunciants and Brahmins speak the truth, and who really speaks falsehood. Gautama Buddha replies, it is fit for you to be in doubt or to be perplexed, for perplexity has arisen to you in a situation where doubt ought to be. Come, O Kamalas, do not depend on hearing systematically transmitted sacred teachings. Successive tradition, hearsay, and body of scriptural collections, speculative reasoning, inferential reasoning, reason cognition, the reflective acceptance of view, seeming capability of someone, or on the idea this renunciant is our venerated teacher. When Kamalas, you know for yourself, these things are unwholesome, these things are blameworthy, these things are censured by the wise. When these things are adopted and are practiced, they produce harm and suffering. Then, Kamalas, you may abandon them. Kamalas, is the arising of greed within a person for the welfare or not? Venerable Sir, it is not for our welfare. Kamalas, a greedy person with a mind obsessed by greed destroys living things, does what is not, takes what is not given, commits adultery, tells lies, and incite others to do the same, conducing to harm and suffering for a long time. Yes, Venerable Sir, the same is then said of hatred and delusion. Kamalas, are these things wholesome or unwholesome? Venerable Sir, they are all unwholesome. Are they blameworthy or not blameworthy? Blameworthy, Venerable Sir. Are they censured or praised by the wise? Censured, Venerable Sir. Undertaken and practiced, do they lead to harm and suffering or not? How is this in the case? Undertaken the practice, these things lead to harm and suffering. So it is for us in this case. The passages go on to recommend non-greed, generosity, non-hate, loving kindness, non-delusion, charity of mind, and wisdom. All things that one can know for oneself as wholesome, as lead to the welfare and happiness. Again, this is from the Kesa Putra or Kamala Sutra from the Anguttara Nikaya. Now, this is from the Chanki Sutra, Majjhima Nikaya. And its belief is not the same as knowledge. This passage, as one above, criticizes sole reliance on unsupported faith, approval, oral tradition, considerations of reason, or reflective acceptance of a view. Rather, the emphasis is on finding a teacher and with trustworthy moral and mental characteristics who gives teachings which conform to reason, can be practiced, and enable personal transformation. There are these 5 things that have twofold immediate consequence. What are the 5? They are faith, approval, systematically transmitted sacred teachings, reason, cognition, and reflective acceptance of view. However, Bharatawa, it may be that something is taken with much faith, yet it is empty, vain, and false. And if something is not taken with much faith, yet it is real, factual, and not the wise. Similarly, for the other 4 grounds, a person who is engaged in the preservation of truth should not come to the definite conclusion, this alone is true and everything else is false. Good Gautama, to what extent is there preservation of truth? To what extent does one preserve the truth? We question good Gautama about preservation of truth. If Bharatava, for a person there is faith, and he says, such is my faith. He preserves the truth. However, does he not yet come to the definite conclusion? This alone is truth and everything else is false. We lay down the preservation of truth to this extent, but yet there is no awakening to truth. To what extent is there awakened to the truth, and to what extent does one become awakened to truth? Here, Bharatava, a Bhikkhu monk resides in a certain village or a township. When a householder or one of the householder's family approaches him and examines him with regard to the 3 qualities, tendency to greed, tendency to hatred, tendency to delusion. It is there for this venerable one such a tendency to greed in such a way that his mind, being overwhelmed by such a tendency, he should say without knowing, I know. Without seeing, I see, and even incite others to such course that would be conductive to their harm and suffering for a long time. Examining in this manner, he comes to know thus. For this venerable one, there is not such a tendency to greed. The bodily and verbally conduct of this venerable one is like that of a non-greedy person. The dhamma he expounds is profound. The dhamma is difficult to see, difficult to understand, peaceful, excellent, not dependent on speculative reason, suitable, possible to be understood by the wise. This teaching cannot easily be expounded by a greedy person. When he finds him to be of cleanse of tendency of greed, he examines further regarding his tendency to hatred, tendency to delusion. When he finds that he is cleansed of the tendency of greed, hatred, and delusion, he proposes faith in him. With faith born, he draws near. Drawing near, he sits close to him. Sitting close, he lends an ear with a tentative ear. He listens to the teaching. Having listened, he remembers the teaching. He examines closely the meaning of the remembered teaching. When he closely examines the meaning, he gains a reflective acceptance of the teaching. When he gains a reflective acceptance of the teaching, desire is born. When desire is born, he makes an effort. Having made an effort, he weighs it up. Having weighed it up, he strives. When striving, he realizes the highest truth in his own person. He sees it. Having penetrated it with wisdom, to this extent, paratava, there is awakening of truth. To this extent, one becomes awakened to truth. We lay down awakening to the truth to this extent. But yet there is no final arrival to truth. To what extent, good Gautama, is the final arrival of truth? It is by the practice, by the concentration, development, and constant cultivation of those very things that there is a final arrival to truth. This is from the Sati Sutta, Majjhima Nikaya. Now finally, in the end of chapter 3 of part 2 for the Theravada tradition, the step-by-step discourse. This is from the Upali Sutra, Majjhima Nikaya. This passage shows the typical way in which Gautama Buddha prepares someone to hear and directly understand the heart of the teaching on suffering and how to transcend it by first taking the ethical discipline and its karmic fruit, and then the kind of mental renunciation that leads to concentration, calm. Only when the mind is then calm, open, receptive, was the key message given such that person could see the suffering which originates. It can really be transcended and cease. Then the Blessed One gave the householder Upali a step-by-step discourse. That is, talk on giving, dana, talk on ethical discipline, sila, and talk on heavenly words. He made known the danger, the inferior nature and tendency to defilements of sensual pleasures, and the advantages of renouncing them. When Gautama Buddha, the Blessed One, knew that the householder Upali's mind was ready, open, without hindrances, inspired, confident, he then expounded to him the elevated Dhamma teaching of the Buddhas, the painful, its origin, its cessation, and the path. Just as a clean cloth with stains removed would take dye, evenly so, while the householder Upali sat there, he obtained the pure, spot-eyeless eye of the righteous Dhamma. Whatsoever is subject to origination is also subject to cessation. This is from the Upali Sutra, Majjhima Nikaya. Now, we will pick up on chapter 3 from part 2 in the Mahayana traditions. And this is the quality of the Dharma, the greater vehicle. Guidance and insight from the Buddha, common Buddhist texts.